My parents defended my sister after she hit my daughter and stole $13,200. I called the police. What followed in court ended our family forever. You'll realize why a few thousand can sometimes be enough to break up a family. Hello everyone, I'm Ethan. I am 41 years old and reside in Chicago with my wife Rachel and our 16-year-old daughter, Emily. The tale I am telling you today occurred 15 months ago. To assist you grasp this story, I need to explain what caused the family tension. It all began when my daughter lost $13,200 in cash, which she had accumulated for years. It all started on a regular evening after dinner. Rachel and I were downstairs discussing our weekend plans. We heard frantic footsteps on the staircase. My daughter Emily dashed down to the living room, pale and terrified. When I noticed her strange countenance, I got up and worriedly said, "What is happening, Emily?" Emily spoke in a trembling voice. "Dad, my small safe is gone. My entire funds totaled $13,200. It is all gone." Rachel and I were astonished when we heard Emily's statements. Emily mentioned the little safe, which I gave her as a gift 6 years ago after she exhibited an interest in learning how to save money. It is 13 by 9 by 9 inches and is ideal for storing her funds. Rachel asked quietly, "Did you check thoroughly? Maybe you left it somewhere in your room and forgot." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. She told us, "I searched my entire room, Mom. I turned everything over down and couldn't find it anywhere." After that, we dashed to Emily's room without wasting another second. The room was disorganized, indicating that our daughter had searched everywhere. I began checking under the bed while Rachel unlocked the closet. Emily proceeded to look through drawers and bookcases. We searched for about 25 minutes and still couldn't find the safe. Emily sat on her bed, eyes filled with tears, and continued, "Last night, the safe was still in my desk drawer. I'm certain of that." With a contemplative expression, I gazed around the room once more. There was no evidence of a break-in. The windows remained tightly locked, and no other valuables, such as her laptop or iPad, were taken. Everything was still intact. While Rachel soothed Emily, I began to consider the alternatives. Why would burglars break in and only take the safe, ignoring other important items? And how could they enter the house without leaving a trace? With a heavy heart, I told my daughter, "You might have mistakenly placed the safe somewhere and forgotten. We'll look more closely tomorrow." But a sense of unease began to rise within me. Emily rushed into the heated mood engulfing the room, as if she remembered something. She informed us, "Dad and Mom, I remember now. Aunt Brittany came to our house this morning." When I heard my sister's name, my heart felt constricted. With a serious expression on my face, I asked my daughter, Emily, if she suspected Aunt Brittany. In that quiet moment, Emily nodded slightly, her eyes filled with concern and perplexity. I shook my head and told my daughter, Emily, that Brittany is family. She would not do that. After a long pause, Emily took a big breath and said shakily, "Dad, approximately 12 days ago, when Aunt Brittany arrived for dinner, she walked into my room, saw the safe, and appeared quite intrigued. She even inquired about how much I had saved." Rachel looked at me doubtfully and said, "Ethan, we need to explore every possibility." She then questioned Emily. "Did Brittany come here this morning?" Emily nodded, then continued more confidently, "Yes. I opened the door for her and walked into the kitchen for breakfast. Aunt Brittany had already left when I returned to the living room. With my mind in turmoil, I attempted to defend my sister. I informed my wife and daughter, there must be a mistake. Brittany couldn't do something like that." Rachel placed her hand on my shoulder, peered into my eyes, and firmly stated, "Ethan, we have security cameras. Let's look at this morning's footage." This suggestion made me feel uncomfortable. It had never occurred to me to suspect my own sister. Without much thought, I shook my head and told my wife, "I don't agree with you suspecting my sister." Rachel groaned and asked, "Ethan, don't you remember what happened 4 days ago?" Hearing my wife's remarks, my mind wandered back to the pictures from 4 days ago at my parents' place. A shiver rushed down my spine as each detail came back to mind. My parents contacted 4 days ago, in the evening, and asked us to come home immediately. They had something vital to announce. The tension was palpable from the moment I walked into the living room. Brittany sat there with a peculiar smile, which I later realized was a warning sign. This was not the first time I had seen that smile. Brittany has used it on numerous occasions when she is going to make an absurd request. Brittany borrowed my new car and crashed it into a light pole, which I still remember vividly. Then my parents requested me to understand my sister and not make an insurance claim to protect Brittany's driving record. For example, when she temporarily borrowed my credit card to purchase a luxury purse worth $2,400, my parents persuaded me not to call the police because it was a minor error. Looking back, I see a pattern. Brittany does something terrible, my parents cover for her, and I'm expected to understand and forgive. This trend has been repeated for years, but this time was significantly worse. When we first got down, Brittany abruptly declared, "I'm getting married in 3 months, and I need to borrow $35,000 from you for the wedding." I nearly choked on the water I was sipping. My pulse raced when I heard that number. I could feel Rachel holding her breath next to me. The entire room was silent for a few seconds, with the exception of Dad's antique clock ticking steadily. This was Brittany's largest request to yet, but it was not surprising. My sister's adult life has been a series of rash financial decisions. At 26, she had borrowed money from me 3 times to pay off credit card debt. At 29, she left her solid career to find her passion, and my parents covered her rent for 6 months. Brittany, 33, had yet to acquire any lessons about financial responsibility. After a brief lull, I spoke out, attempting to remain cool but unable to conceal my disbelief. I asked Brittany, $35,000? Are you planning a royal wedding? Brittany did not laugh at my humor. Her eyes seemed strangely determined. She sat up straight, looked at me, and said, "A wedding is the most important day of a person's life. I need it at the Plaza Hotel. Derek's family is all prosperous company owners. I do not want people to believe we are inferior." Derek was Brittany's boyfriend. They had barely known each other for 8 months before deciding to marry. My sister's hurried marriage stunned me. At this time, Rachel gently intervened, telling Brittany, "Brittany, the most beautiful wedding is when everyone is happy, not when everyone is broke." When Brittany heard Rachel's statements, she looked at her sister-in-law aggressively and stated, "This is not a joke. My future depends on it. Derek's relatives will criticize our entire family during this wedding." After hearing my sister say that, I attempted to remain calm and responded, "Britt, you need to understand that $35,000 isn't pocket cash. We can have a lovely wedding at a more affordable price. Perhaps approximately $12,000. After hearing my offer, Brittany firmly stated, "I can't do that, Ethan. I previously promised Derek that the wedding would be spectacular. The Plaza Hotel is the only place that can match our expectations." Rachel noticed the standoff in the discussion and asked Brittany, "But why isn't Derek contributing to the costs? If his family is wealthy, as you mentioned, they would undoubtedly want to help." When Rachel asked, Brittany blushed and added, "Derek is saving money to buy us a house once we marry. He can't afford the wedding." After hearing Brittany's explanation, I sighed and replied, "I apologize, Brittany. I can't assist you with this amount." Brittany slammed her hand on the table, causing the teacups to tremble, and yelled, "You think you're so rich, showing off your new Tesla and Hawaii vacation, then being stingy about helping your sister once in a lifetime." Before I could react, my father stepped up. His face flushed with rage, and he demanded angrily, "What sort of brother are you if you can't care for your sister? Do you know Nathan next door? He's not as wealthy as you, yet he bought his sister a 2-bedroom house, while you won't even pay for your sister's wedding." My parents' statements made me angry. I'd helped them pay off their house, covered Brittany's college tuition, and always tried to be a decent son and brother. But they never thought it was enough. Rachel sensed my rage and squeezed my palm beneath the table, as if to calm me down. I took a big breath, looked Dad in the eyes, and stated, "Dad, I am not this family's banker. Rachel and I work hard for everything we own. $35,000 is a lot of money, and I believe it is unnecessary for a one-day party." My mother, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke up, sadly asking, "So, you won't help your sister?" After Mom asked her a question, I informed her I needed to speak with Rachel alone. Rachel and I went to the porch shortly after that to discuss how much money we had given Brittany. About 5 minutes later, we returned. The atmosphere remained strained. I glanced at my parents and sister and told them, "We will give you $6,000 as a wedding gift. That's a realistic amount we can assist with." When Brittany heard the sum, she jumped up quickly and remarked contemptuously, "I don't need your charity money. I'll figure it out myself." She turned abruptly and went out of the room. The door crashed behind her, rattling the entire wall. My parents stood up and went into the rear room without saying anything, leaving us in the oppressive mood. On the way home, I was still angry and bewildered. Rachel tried to console me, but I knew this wouldn't be easy. When she didn't get her way, Brittany always found a way to respond. Returning to my daughter's missing safe story. After hearing my wife mention the earlier event and recalling what had happened, I reluctantly nodded and said, "All right, we'll check the cameras." I was hoping Brittany would be absolutely innocent when I reviewed the cams. But what happened next changed my opinion of my sister. With my heart beating, we all stared at my phone screen. I launched the front entrance security camera app and rewound to this morning. The footage definitely shows Brittany arriving at our residence around 8:10 a.m. In the video, she rang the doorbell, Emily opened it, and Brittany entered after exchanging a few words. What was notable was that Brittany arrived with only her phone. Watching the video brought up recollections of similar situations from the past. I remembered Emily when she was younger. Brittany's birthday money was vanished after her visit. My folks believed Emily must have dropped it. They advised me not to suspect my sister without reason, or the time Rachel's watch went missing while Brittany stayed overnight. Each time, I felt like I knew what had happened despite the lack of hard evidence, and the entire family was always eager to keep the peace. More significantly, I trusted my sister not to cause any harm to the family. Rachel squeezed my hand while we watched. The camera could no longer record anything after they entered the house. With tensions increasing, we waited to see when Brittany would leave. Brittany reappeared at the front door at 8:26, exactly 16 minutes after her arrival. But this time, she was holding a little pink bag, large enough to keep Emily's mini secure. When I saw that vision, Rachel took a big breath and Emily burst into tears. I felt as if a weight was weighing on my shoulders. Despite the fact that the evidence was right in front of my eyes, I couldn't believe my sister could do such things. There was no place for doubt or cover-ups anymore. For years, I had given Brittany the benefit of the doubt, believing that the unusual happenings were mere coincidence. I believed my parents' words that family must protect one another. But this time, there was nothing to justify. No way to avoid the reality. Brittany had crossed the line, and I felt betrayed by my unwavering belief in familial relationships. After a long silence, I turned off the video, looked at my wife and daughter, and told them, "We need to talk to Brittany." Rachel asked me with determined eyes, "What if she denies it?" With my voice lowering, I replied, "We have evidence. She cannot argue with that." My heart felt as if it had stopped beating. There was no plausible explanation for Brittany coming empty-handed but departing with a bag carrying an object the same size as Emily's safe. The grim reality has surfaced. Looking into Emily's tearful eyes, I firmly grasped her shoulder and replied, "I'll get your money back. Promise." At this point, I had a hunch that the approaching encounter would be about more than just safety, money, and family. Relationships would be strained to their limits. With a heavy heart, I took up the phone and called Brittany. After a few rings, she responded with her normal happy tone. "Hello Ethan, what up?" Trying to remain cool, I inquired, "Where are you?" Brittany responded with a slightly shocked tone, "I'm at Mom and Dad's. Is there an issue?" After hearing the response, I nodded to Rachel and Emily. I just told Brittany, "We're going to talk about the money for the party. We will be there in 15 minutes. Brittany said, "You changed your mind about money? Great. Come over. I will wait." After hanging up the phone, the three of us hastily got into the car and drove to my parents' house, which was about 12 miles away. No one spoke during the trip. Tension and fear flooded the cramped area of the automobile. I had to lie to Brittany because I knew we wouldn't be able to see her if I said the truth. When we arrived, my parents and Brittany were sitting in the living room. When they saw us walk in with somber expressions, my mother knew something was wrong. My mother looked at me worriedly and said, "Ethan, what's wrong?" Without saying, "Mom," I walked straight to Brittany, looked her in the eyes and asked calmly, "Brittany, why did you come to my house this morning?" The blunt inquiry caught Brittany off guard, and she struggled for a moment before saying, I just went by to see Emily. I miss the kid." Emily took a step forward, looked Brittany in the eyes and asked, shakily but determinedly, "Aunt Brittany, please give me back my mini-safe and the money inside." Brittany appeared stunned, jumped up, and approached Emily angrily asking, "Are you claiming I took your money?" Emily did not back down. She began to remark, "This morning, only you came to our house." Without waiting for Emily to finish, Brittany struck my daughter across the face. The slap resonated around the room, surprising everyone. Without hesitation, I stepped forward, grabbed Brittany's hand, and drew her away from my daughter. With an outraged tone I demanded, "How dare you hit my daughter?" Brittany challenged me, saying, "She lied to me. If you are tough enough, go ahead and hit me. If you hit me, you're just a coward who assaults women." When I heard those words, my heart pounded so violently that I thought it would burst out of my chest. My hands shook with rage, like if they could shatter anything they touched. I'd never felt so hateful against anyone, especially someone I'd loved and protected for years. Brittany was standing there, defying me, having stolen my daughter's money and slapped my granddaughter. I felt betrayed, used, and appalled by her acts. All the fraternal feelings I'd developed over the years appeared to go in an instant. While I was battling to control my wrath, Rachel went forward, placed her hand on my shoulder, and drew me back. Rachel looked at me with hard eyes, something I rarely seen in my wife, and said firmly, "If you want to hit a woman, let a woman handle it." None of us could respond to Rachel's next action. She pounced at Brittany with the quickness of a leopard pouncing on its prey. Rachel's hand shot up and landed hard on Brittany's cheek, the harsh sound ringing through the room. Rachel slapped Brittany again immediately after the initial slap and yelled, "You piece of trash! You dare to grab my daughter's money and hit her?" Brittany lurched backward, her eyes wide with shock and anguish. But before she could regain her equilibrium, Rachel grabbed Brittany's hair and yanked hard, knocking her to the ground. Rachel grabbed Brittany's hair and whispered, word by word, "I'll show you what real pain feels like." My father tried to interfere, saying in a frightened voice, "Rachel, stop right now." My mother covered her face, wailing and begging, "Please stop it." Emily stood in the corner of the room, paralyzed, her eyes wide with dread. I felt completely helpless, unsure what to do in this situation. 5 minutes seemed like 5 centuries. Rachel finally let go of Brittany's tangled hair, possibly after venting her frustration. Brittany quickly slid away, her cheeks flushed scarlet, and whispered chokedly, "I'll call the cops. You will go to jail for hitting me." Rachel took her phone from her pocket with no fear in her gaze, never leaving Brittany. With a frigid smile she dialed 911 and stated, "I'll contact both the police and CPS as you requested. Let them come here and discover who the true criminal is." When Rachel was ready to hit the call button, my father exclaimed, "Enough! Everyone stop!" His voice resonated across the room like thunder, causing us all to jump. The space abruptly collapsed into oppressive quiet. My father looked at each of us and remarked severely, "We're a family, and this is how we settle problems. By using violence and threats against one another?" At that point, I realized our entire family had crossed a threshold beyond which we could not return. The words and deeds that had just occurred would create wounds that may never fully heal. And it all began with a tiny safe and $13,200. After everyone had calmed down, I stared into my parents' eyes and told them firmly, "Brittany stole Emily's safe, which contained $13,200 in savings. We have evidence from the front door security camera." After hearing me finish, Brittany refused to accept it, shouting in anger, "I didn't take anything. There is a conspiracy to frame me." My father stood up, his face blazing with rage, but instead of staring at Brittany, he glanced directly at Rachel. He pointed at my wife's face and yelled, "You dare hit my daughter in my own home? Which kind of lady are you?" Rachel stood firm, fearless, and said, "The kind of woman who protects her daughter when she's attacked and robbed." My mother held Brittany, looked at me reproachfully and said, "Ethan, can't you control your wife? She just assaulted your sister." I couldn't take the unfairness longer and yelled, "What about Brittany slapping my daughter?" My father glared at me with scornful eyes and shouted words that surprised me. "If you can't discipline your kid, let your sister do it." Those remarks were like a knife thrust through my heart. I felt my entire body tremble with wrath and pain. I questioned how my father could say that. How could he defend a crook or someone violent? I did not want to dispute anymore. Without saying anything, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. When the phone connected, I spoke clearly and confidently. "Hello, I need to report a theft and assault. A family member just slapped my 15-year-old daughter, and her $13,200 savings were stolen. We need immediate assistance." While I was speaking with the 911 operator, the room fell silent. My mother started crying. My father stood there with an amazing expression, and Brittany paled. After hanging up the phone, I told everyone, "The police will be here in 12 minutes. We'll all have to give statements about what happened." Brittany abruptly rose up, grabbed her handbag and car keys, and prepared to depart. But before she could reach the door, Rachel had shifted and was in her path. Rachel stared at Brittany with steely eyes and said, "You take one more step, and I'll beat you up again. The cops are on their way and you are attempting to flee. That makes you feel more guilty." Brittany backed away, eyes filled with hatred and dread, and sat down on the sofa. She knew Rachel was not joking. Perhaps she recognized that fleeing the scene would only make matters worse. My parents stood there, absolutely powerless. They were used to Brittany always being covered for and excused. But this time, They said I'd gone too far. I had brought the family situation outside, and they were no longer in control. Emily, my daughter, stood behind me, gripping my hand tightly. I could feel both fear and gratitude in her gaze. For the first time, she witnessed her parents stand up to protect her rather than compromise for family harmony. The mood in my parents' living room was suddenly more intense than ever. We sat quietly, waiting for the sound of police sirens. Every passing second seemed like torment, but I knew I was doing the right thing. Police came to my parents' house shortly after the argument, responding to my call. 2 officers, 1 male and 1 female, listened to the stories of all people involved. They watched the video from the security camera I had stored on my phone and recorded everyone's statements. After gathering enough information, the police invited us to the station to complete the investigation. Brittany, who was now calmer, continued to deny responsibility, insisting she did not remove the safe and Emily was mistaken. At the police station, after carefully reviewing the footage, the case officer looked at Brittany and remarked, "Miss Barker, the evidence is quite apparent. You arrived at your brother's house empty-handed and departed with a sack large enough to contain the stolen safe. Would you like to update your statement?" When confronted with incontrovertible evidence, Brittany burst into tears and admitted her guilt. "I took it. I didn't realize it had so much money. I assumed there were only a few thousand. I apologize. I'm very sorry." The officer nodded before turning to me and saying, "Mr. Barker, because this is a family theft, we normally allow the parties time to examine their options before filing charges. Do you want to think more about this?" Without hesitation, I looked the officer in the eyes and answered, "I thought it through. I'd like to proceed with this case." Brittany began crying more, pleading me, "Ethan, please, I'll repay the money. Do not do this to me." My parents pleaded with me, but I had already made my decision. Brittany did not simply steal a big amount of money. She also struck my daughter, a youngster. This was not behavior that could be ignored. The officer nodded, then added, "So, we'll file theft charges against Miss Brittany Barker. Miss Brittany and Mrs. Rachel Barker may face charges related to the attack. However, because Miss Brittany struck a kid first and Mrs. Rachel retaliated to defend her child, the court may consider these circumstances when rendering a decision." After all that happened that day, I saw a future in which my family would never be the same again. But I knew I was doing the right thing by teaching Brittany about accountability for her actions. Brittany and my parents came to our house 10 days after we met at the police station. There was no argument or fury this time, only tears and pleadings. Brittany stared at me with red eyes and a trembling voice saying, "Ethan, I sincerely apologize for what I did. I'm not sure what I was thinking anymore. I needed money for the forthcoming wedding, and when I saw Emily's savings, I couldn't resist. I pledged to pay back the total money within a month. Please drop the suit. I cannot bear having a criminal record." My father said urgently, "Son, think about your sister's future. A criminal record will damage her profession and change her life forever. She has realized her error and swears never to do it again." With tears running down her cheeks, my mother said, "Ethan, please forgive your sister. We all make mistakes. Don't let a single mistake ruin everything." I gazed at them, and my heart ached. Part of me wanted to forgive, let go, and work to mend the family. But another part of me realized that if Brittany did not suffer the repercussions of her conduct, she would never learn a valuable lesson. While my parents continued to plead, my thoughts went to what had happened. Brittany had struck my daughter, slapped a 15-year-old child in the face, and had not apologized to Emily. She was just concerned about herself and her future. Even more tragically, my parents were in the same situation. Throughout the fight, they never looked to Emily to check on her or console her. Not a single, "Are you okay?" or "I'm sorry." Their only concern was Brittany's safety. I felt tremendous grief when I saw Emily standing there, hurt and confused. She couldn't understand how her family members could treat her like this. First stealing her savings, then slapping her face, and now utterly ignoring her sentiments. Throughout my life, I was taught that family comes first. But standing in front of me now was a family defending the perpetrator while abandoning the victim. This was not the family I wanted my daughter to grow up in. These were not the principles I wished to pass on to my child. After some thought, I looked into my parents' and Brittany's eyes and said, "I'm sorry, but I'm unable to drop the lawsuit. Not only did you steal, but you also struck my daughter, which is completely wrong. You must take responsibility for your actions." At that moment, the air in the room felt dense. Everyone knew the decision had been taken, and there was no turning back. Brittany's and my parents' opinions shifted dramatically after they realized I would not reconsider my decision. Tears and pleads vanished, replaced by rage and threats. Brittany rose up, her face crimson with wrath, and stated in a hateful tone, "So, this is how you treat your family? Fine. Do you want me to go to jail? Okay, but I will not forget this. I will do everything I can to get back to you. Ethan. You will come to regret this decision." With disappointed eyes, my father shook his head and stated, "From now on, you are no longer my son. Ethan, family comes first, but you sent your sister to jail rather than defending her. I will never forgive you for this." My mother, sobbing hysterically, stared at me with pained eyes and said, "How can you do this to your sister, Ethan? You are damaging Brittany's future. I'll never see you again unless you withdraw the case." Those remarks were like knives piercing into my heart. I had always loved my family, but I couldn't accept ignoring significant misbehavior because of familial ties. The atmosphere became so uncomfortable that Rachel had to speak up and say, "I believe you should leave. We all need time to relax." Brittany turned and threatened them again as they departed. "Ethan, you'll pay for this. I promise." When the door closed, I felt as if a part of myself did as well. I had lost my family, my parents and my sister, because I stood up for what I considered to be right. In the following days, I began receiving calls from other family members, uncles, aunts and cousins, all of whom chastised me for reporting my sister to the police. I tried to explain the problem at first, but it immediately became clear that they had heard a completely different version. Brittany and my parents had disseminated rumors that I'd sued my sister for a few $100s, without disclosing that the true sum was $13,200, or that Brittany had hit Emily. An uncle called me with scorn, saying, "You're heartless, Ethan. How could you do this to your sister? You want to wreck her life over a small amount of money? Walk." When I tried to explain that Brittany had taken $13,200 and beat my kid, he simply chuckled and said, "Don't try to defend your conduct. Your parents have already told me everything." A day later, Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, called in a condescending tone and said, "Ethan, you've really disappointed me. How much do you believe Brittany took? Was it only about $600 and you're putting your sister to jail for it?" I attempted to remain cool and told Aunt Carol, "It wasn't $600. It was more than $13,000. Not only that, Brittany slapped Emily." Aunt Carol's voice conveyed surprise, but it vanished swiftly. She went on, "There must be a mistake. Brittany wouldn't do that. She might be impulsive, but she would never hurt a child." Following the talk with Aunt Carol, I received a text from my cousin Jason. "Hello, you traitor. What have you done to Brittany? You had your wife beat up your sister and then phoned the police. Your family is severely dysfunctional." After a few similar calls and texts, I decided to stop attempting to explain. Instead, I sent Brittany a simple message. "I intended to resolve this quietly. Rachel and I intended to withdraw the charges or seek a lesser sentence for you, but you went too far. I will not explain my acts to others. Time will reveal the truth." I also sent a message to all of the family members who had contacted me. "I understand you learned about Brittany's position from my parents. I'd like to explain a few topics. The stolen amount was $13,200, not just a few hundred. Brittany slapped Emily when she was caught. I have video footage of all of this, which I will bring in court. I will not discuss this topic further until the trial is completed, and I hope you will attend to learn the truth." That evening, Rachel discovered me alone in the dark living room, staring at an untouched glass of whiskey. She sat alongside me, softly placed her arm around my shoulder, and whispered, "Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the most." I nodded with deep grief. I answered, "I always believed my folks were honest and straight. They taught me to always tell the truth and take responsibility for my actions. But now they're doing the opposite of what they taught me." Rachel squeezed my hand and added, "They'll find out the truth when the case goes to court. Don't bother about what others think. The truth will prevail, Ethan." When Emily heard our conversations, she entered the living room. She sat down next to me. Despite being affected by her aunt's behavior, she kept a strong attitude. She stared at me intently and said, "I know you're doing the right thing, Dad, and I'm proud of you for it." Those remarks provided me strength, allowing me to stand harder in my resolve. Despite the criticism and seclusion from my family, I knew I was doing the right thing. 6 weeks later, the court date had arrived. The county courthouse was packed with family members from both sides, those who supported me, and those who stood with Brittany. Rachel, Emily and I sat next to our lawyer, while Brittany sat with her defense counsel. My parents sat directly behind her, their eyes avoiding mine. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern demeanor, opened the hearing by saying, "Today we're trying the case of State versus Brittany Barker, with charges of second-degree theft and assault on a minor." Following the opening, the prosecutor presented evidence, including the security camera footage, Emily and my statements, and Brittany's confession at the police station. The courtroom fell silent when the footage was shown, which plainly showed Brittany arriving empty-handed and departing with a bag the right size for the stolen safe. When it was Brittany's turn, she stepped up, her expression filled with regret. She confessed to the court in a shaky voice, "Your Honor, I stole the safe from my granddaughter for $13,200. I have no legitimate excuse other than that I needed money for my forthcoming wedding. I also admit to slapping Emily after being accused. I deeply regret what I did." Brittany's defense attorney underlined that this was her first violation, that she had fully cooperated after being apprehended, and that she was determined to repay the stolen funds. After hearing both sides, the court issued the verdict. "Miss Barker, you broke the law and betrayed your family's trust. You took use of your relationship with your granddaughter to gain access to and steal a large sum of money before assaulting a kid. The court imposes a 14-month suspended sentence, a $2,500 fine, and orders you to refund the total $13,200 stolen. In addition, you must attend anger management workshops and a rehabilitation program." The judge turned to Rachel and remarked, "Mrs. Barker, the court recognizes that you acted to defend your daughter, but violence is not the acceptable approach. The court fines you $600 for this behavior." When the trial concluded, I felt as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Justice had been served, even if it cost me my family bonds. As I exited the courthouse, I purposefully walked past my parents and Brittany, wanting to communicate a few words, but they turned away, avoiding my gaze. In that moment, I realized that this wound would take a long time to heal, if it could heal at all. Following the trial, everything changed. 10 days after Brittany's conviction, a relative informed me that her fiancé had called off the engagement. He, a prominent lawyer, couldn't imagine marrying someone with a criminal record, particularly for theft and child violence. Brittany lost her employment at the financial firm after they learnt about the case. With a criminal record and no employment, she was compelled to return to live with my parents. My parents still refused to approach me, accusing me of damaging Brittany's future. Despite my repeated attempts to contact and send messages, there was no response. What's fascinating is how my family's sentiments about me shifted dramatically following the trial. Uncle Robert, who had called to chastise me previously, sent me a message. "I apologize, Ethan, for not trusting you. I reviewed the court filings. Brittany done truly terrible things. Aunt Carol, who had brutally chastised me, unexpectedly arrived at our house with a package of handmade cookies and stated, 'Ethan, I was wrong to believe your parents without first asking you. I am sorry.' However, not all changes were favorable. Relatives close to my parents began avoiding them at family functions. I was told that during someone's birthday party nearly no one sat at the same table as my parents. Many individuals muttered about how they had shielded a thief while lying to the entire family. Cousin Mark informed me that my parents were now considered outsiders in their own family. Everyone knew they had lied about the money and Brittany punching Emily. Nobody trusted them anymore. On the other side, Emily and I received a lot of unexpected help. Many relatives gave Emily cards and gifts containing encouraging messages. Emily, despite acting strong throughout the process, needed to consult a psychotherapist to cope with feelings of betrayal and stress caused by the scenario. Being duped and assaulted by family members caused profound wounds in her soul. Rachel and I remained confident that we had done the right thing. We didn't regret our decision, even though it meant losing our relationship with my parents and sister. We taught Emily an important lesson about standing up for herself and remaining true to her ideals, even if it meant confronting loved ones. One day while we were eating dinner, Emily asked me with pensive eyes, "Dad, do you think we'll ever talk to Grandpa, Grandma, and Aunt Brittany again?" Sighing, I replied, "I'm not sure, dear. Time will tell, but I hope they realize we were doing the right thing someday." Rachel grasped my hand and softly remarked, "Sometimes doing the right thing entails making difficult choices. But that is what characterizes us." In that moment, I felt the weight of prior decisions, but I also recognized the resilience in my tiny family. A family that had weathered adversity together and remained steadfast in the face of challenges. It has been 15 months after the case, and our lives have gradually returned to normal. Emily is now 16 and has developed significantly since what happened. She overcame her shock and gained a deeper understanding of the importance of integrity thanks to treatment and our assistance. One of the most major modifications we made was to open a bank account for Emily, rather than using a safe. Emily's savings are now safely protected, and she is learning actual financial management skills through a banking app. I wish I had given her this practical lesson in financial responsibility sooner. My family's situation stays unaltered. My parents still refuse to speak to me. They believe that I betrayed the family. Brittany, according to family, still lives with my parents and works part-time at a neighborhood supermarket, which is a significant drop-down from her previous financial management role. The conversation surrounding the incident appears to never end. I frequently hear whispered talks at large family gatherings, when I am still invited. Many people still believe I was too harsh, that I damaged the family's happiness and my sister's future. Others, particularly those who have looked into the subject, understand and even support my decision. Most recently, during a relative's wedding, an aunt approached me with a drink and simply stated, "Ethan, you know your parents are so lonely now. Brittany has no future left since you couldn't overlook a minor error." I looked straight into her eyes and said, "Aunt, stealing and beating a child are not minor offenses." My aunt shook her head and walked away, leaving me with thoughts I'd been struggling with for a year. Was I overly harsh? Am I truly the one who shattered my family? And now I'd want to ask you all, am I the one who ruined my family's happiness, or did Brittany's actions wreck her future and sever our family bonds? Do you have a better method to address this situation? It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no hugs. Just two women standing in the quiet truth of what they'd done to each other, and what they were finally learning to undo. Weeks passed, seasons shifted, my life filled with small, peaceful rituals. Thursday nights at a pottery class, Sunday morning walks with Ethan, late dinners with Chloe. I started reclaiming corners of my life I'd given away one transaction at a time. My couch wasn't a guest bed anymore. My paycheck stayed in my account. My energy wasn't spent patching up someone else's choices. One evening I sat on that same couch scrolling through photos and stumbled upon one from 3 years ago, me and Vanessa at a cafe. Her smiling wide while I looked exhausted, eyes red from crying. I remembered that day. She'd asked for one last loan. I'd said yes. I stared at that photo for a long moment, then deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Months later, I saw a photo of Vanessa on social media. She was standing in front of a small, bare apartment. Mismatched furniture, mattress on the floor, a plant on the windowsill. The same plant she'd brought when she first showed up at my door 3 years ago. I didn't feel pity or smugness. I just felt free. Because maybe that's what love really is. Not saving someone over and over, but finally letting them face their own darkness so they can find their own light. That night I sent a short text. "Proud of you." She replied hours later. "Thanks for everything, even the hard part." Sometime after midnight, I lay in bed. The quiet filling every corner of the room. I realized something I'd never allowed myself to believe before. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're the most honest form of love there is. Love without them isn't compassion. It's debt dressed up as devotion. For years, I mistook silence for peace and sacrifice for loyalty. But now I know the truth. Sometimes you don't need to raise your voice to win, you just quietly pull the plug, and watch the lights go out.